with me is Paul Butler, of course, who's been watching this as well. Paul, it's been a real split-screen day for us. We were out at the Supreme Court and now back in here. But to see this trial progressing and realize how much information there really is to present to the American public and potentially to voters, and how much information is not being presented on election interference because of the successful delay tactics of, brilliant delay tactics that, and the argument today, which, as we know, could lead to more delay and more hearings. But here, this trial is proceeding, and this trial has some powerful witness. We've yet to see the cross-examination, I should point out.
Yeah, indeed it does. So the caution is the government gets to go first because it has the burden of proof. If it didn't look like the government was winning right now, Alvin Bragg would be in big trouble. But the evidence that the Manhattan DA is presenting is really compelling. Again, we think of what happened at the Supreme Court this day as being about the election interference case. Alvin Bragg insists his case isn't about business records. His case is also about election interference. So he's saying that the reason that all these payments were made to Trump's people who Trump had relationships with, and in some cases, people who made false claims about Trump, it wasn't because Trump was concerned about Melania, which is his defense. He didn't want his family members to be embarrassed. This was all about the campaign. It was about the 2016 campaign. So, again, Bragg has a good point when he says this is as much about election interference as what's going on in Washington, D.C.
And it is striking here, Katie and Chris, that for whatever reasons, you rarely see a defendant in court without any member of the family, not the sons, not the daughter, either of the daughters, nobody, and it's clearly not Melania. Obviously, there are a lot of reasons why that would be the choice. But from watching and at least reading this Google Doc, he is really very much alone there. That's what the jury is seeing, right?
That is really interesting. I mean, listen, we could end up seeing Don Jr. or Eric. I'd be more surprised to see Ivanka there, or even Melania. Ivanka has been trying to rehab her image. Her and Jared have been trying to separate themselves from Donald Trump, from whatever might happen next in his campaign or during the presidency, whereas Don and Eric have certainly been a whole lot closer. They were a part of the last judgment against Donald Trump in the civil case here in New York. But that is a really interesting point, Andrea, that he is very much alone in that courtroom.
And also, whether it was before the presidency or after the presidency, how much he treats someone like the head of a tabloid publication, right, that regularly puts things on the front page.
UFOs spotted.
Well, also, but that Donald Trump knows to be untrue, things that might have been planted, let's say, about his opponents. You were covering Donald Trump at the time. I was covering some of the people who were targets of some of that, let's call it, misinformation. And the amount of actual detail, I think, we're told Donald Trump just walked back into court. The amount of detail that David Pecker is providing and being very consistent about it, and also his demeanor described on the stand.
He's got an immunity deal, which I think makes this more interesting.
Yeah.
And it certainly seems to be allowing him to talk more freely, it seems. You're talking about what was happening on the campaign trail. Remember, there was a crazy moment. It was right around the convention. I think it was right after the convention, because Ted Cruz wasn't supporting Donald Trump. He got up on the convention stage when Donald Trump was going to be nominated. At the moment, Donald Trump was worried that there would be an uprising within the convention, and they would actually end up nominating Ted Cruz and not him. And Ted Cruz gets up to give a speech, and everyone says, oh, this is the moment where Ted Cruz is going to finally endorse Donald Trump. He doesn't say anything about Donald Trump during that speech. He notably does not endorse him, doesn't say anything glowing about him. And it was the day after that I believe the Inquirer came out and said that Ted Cruz's dad was linked to the assassination of JFK. And then Donald Trump gave this really bizarre news conference in one of the ballrooms in Cleveland, at a hotel in Cleveland, about it. And this was David Pecker putting it on the front page, and he's testified that wasn't true, that he put it up there because it was helpful to Donald Trump to try to diminish Ted Cruz. and that Michael Cohen, him and Donald Trump all together came up with this, the prosecution is calling it a scheme, to make sure that negative information about Donald Trump's opponents, Andrea, was put front and center, and positive information about Donald Trump was put front and center to help this campaign, this outsider campaign.
And if you remember at the time, Katie and Chris, that's when Donald Trump said, as Vaughn has been pointing out, that's when he said at the time, well, he doesn't believe this and he doesn't have any idea how that happened. I mean, he disavowed any knowledge of that Enquirer story. And one of the points I was going to make about the expectation of family, I don't think any of us expected the family to show up so much. Certainly not Melania and Ivanka. But I'm questioning the lawyers at the table, whether the jury is surprised to see him alone. Did they have an expectation of seeing somebody with him in court?
Catherine, does that matter?
It does matter when you have, unfortunately, a lot of defendants are indigent and they don't have family or they don't have family members who show up. But when they do, a defense attorney could make use of that and, tell the client, oh, kiss at your mom, something. So the jury, you hope, are saying, oh, he has a family. I mean, granted, everyone knows who he is, but it is something about the absence. The daughter, Tiffany, she's an adult, and I think she's a lawyer, and the two sons. And I think the two sons are based here in the Northeast, that none of them have been there. Now, it's still early. We only have one witness in, but I think the jury does notice that.